Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl, and this is going to be episode 121 of my poker vlog. For this one, I cover a 2-5 session at Orange City Racing and Card Club. Before I get into it, I'm happy to announce that myself, as well as Greg Goes All In and Pokerface Ash, will be hosting a meetup game in Franklin, Kentucky, March 3rd. It's the grand opening of the Triple Barrel Social Club. I hope to see you there. You can comment below or message me on Instagram for more details. It's definitely going to be a fun opening weekend filled with a lot of poker and a lot of action. If you're unable to make that, there are plenty of ways to play with me online. There are also links to that in the description below. And without further ado, let's go over some hands. First hand of note. I'm in the big blind with ace king offsuit. With 3 limps, the small blind raises to 20. I'm definitely going to 3-bet this hand. Trying to develop a wider 3-betting range. I definitely want to 3-bet or fold a lot more often than I do right now. So ace-king offsuit is definitely going to be in one of these hands. I make it $65. Well, a middle position limper decides to jam for 70. Hoping that somehow the small blind can reopen the pot with a raise and we can get it all in. But he decides to just call, and that means I'm relegated to just call as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop of Queen Jack for Rainbow. Not my favorite board. When small blind checks to me, because I would still have to beat the all-in player, I think that it's unnecessary to start betting right now. Getting the small blind out of the pot just to lose the all-in players seems like a highly risky endeavor for not a whole lot of payout. I choose to check it back. Turn is the King of Hearts. Definitely an extremely helpful card. Happy to turn top. When the small blind checks me a second time, I think this spot's fine to mix between betting or checking. I choose to check this top pair top kicker. Getting raised would put me into a miserable spot, and I have plenty of showdown value even against 2 different players. When the river is the 4 of spades, I think I can definitely go for a bet here. I now beat hands like Queen Jack, although I doubt my opponent would play it this way. Maybe a disbelieving jack or a worse king will pay off a bet, so I fire $70 into the middle. The small blind decides to fold. I quickly show my hand, thinking that it's highly likely that I've won this hand, but the middle position all-in player takes a bit of time before showing 8-4 offsuit. So poker is not dead in Florida, as we're just gonna limp call a 3-bet with 8-4 offsuit. Similarly mentioned before, I'm trying to widen my 3-betting range, and that means ace-queen suited. When a later position player raises to 20, I'm definitely going to 3-bet this one. I make it 70, and everyone folds, but happy to be executing a better 3-betting range than I have in the past. Nearly identical to the last hand. This time I have pocket queens. An early position player opens at $20. I 3-bet to 60. Would like to get some action. Definitely a slam dunk 3-bet hand, but similarly everyone folds and we win another pot. The next hand, there's a button straddle. I'm in late position. With 1 limp, I open to $35 with ace-9 offsuit. And the button who's the button straddler goes all in for $145. The limper folds and it's back on me. So it's 110 to win about 190. I'm getting almost 1.5 to 1 on a call. And I do think my opponent does have some suited connectors like Jack 10 suited, maybe King Queen suited in his range, where ace high is doing decent against. Additionally, on the absolute worst case scenarios, when he has like jacks or queens or pocket 9s or ace king, all of those hands I still have 30% equity against. So I think this is a pretty standard call. When I make the call, my opponent has King 10 suited, so one of the hands we're definitely ahead of. Pretty happy to see that one. Can we hold though? Queen 8 is pretty safe. Turn another 8. Ace high will definitely continue playing. Can I fade the 6 outs one time? Yes, this time the deuce of diamonds secures me the hand, and ace high is going to be good on this one.
You were good, kid, real good. But as long as I'm around, you'll always be second best, see?
Next hand of note. An early position player raised to $15. I'm in the small blind with pocket 6s. I'm definitely going to make the call here. A little too loose to 3-bet, I think. And the big blind decides to call as well. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of 10-7-10. Pretty good for 6s. 10 kind of unlikely as there's 2 of them out there. And a 7 shouldn't be in too many people's range. So I should have the best hand some of the time. Either way, I'm going to check and flow. On the flop, it checks back. When the turn is a 5 under my 6s, I think I can definitely go for some value here. Value and protection want to charge like king, jack, ace, queen, things such as that. So I throw out a bet of $30. The initial raiser is the only caller, so we are heads up to a river, which is the 3 of diamonds. Now I think my hand has plenty of showdown value. I think maybe some ace or king highs might try to bluff at this, especially if they had missed spades. If my opponent had like king, queen of spades, or maybe 8-9, they may try to bluff at this river, but they're probably not going to call a bet if I decide to bet myself. So we're going to go into a bluff catching check call mode. I check. My opponent quickly checks it back, and we're just going to show our 6s, and they are indeed good on this one. I am on the button, and with an under the gun straddle, there's 1 limp. When it folds to me, I'm going to raise to $50. King 10 of hearts, definitely pretty good to open. Get to play the hand in position. I feel pretty good about it. Only the limper decides to call, so we're heads up to a flop of 10, 9, 8 rainbow. 1 heart. When my opponent checks to me, honestly, this is a board that doesn't really connect to a button opener's range all too often. It definitely smacks a limp caller a lot harder. He has 6-7 and jack 7, and I really don't. I do have queen jack in my range, which is the nuts. Having a very minimal nut advantage, I think, leads me to throw out a bet. I'm going to go a little over half pot, as we're like hands like 8-7 and jack 9. Hands like pair plus straight draw to put in a lot of money while they're not ahead. But my opponent either smashed this board or understands it's better for his range, as he has all the sets and all the 2 pairs. A lot more than I do, I think, because he raises to $150. At this point, I wish I would have just checked back this flop. I do check back top pair good kickers some of the time. This is a board that's quite dangerous for me. I could be drawing pretty close to dead some of the time, so I choose to just let this one go, and I don't think betting this particular board with my particular hand is the best play, though. Next, hand of note. An early position player raises to $15. There is the small blind who calls, and I'm in the big blind with ace-jack offsuit. Similarly to the theme of this video, is I'm trying to 3-bet much more often. This hand is going to be no different. I raise to $50. Both the opener and the small blind decide to call, so we're 3 ways to a 3-bet pot, which comes jack 3 deuce, 2 spades. Very happy with that board. I happen to have ace jack, but I would bet my over pairs, sometimes some ace king, definitely some spade draws, such as like ace 10 of spades, things like that. So I bet $60. Both opponents quickly fold, and we are definitely happy to take this one down. 3-betting pre definitely leads to bigger pots post flop. We are moved from the must move to the main game, where we win a smaller pot. But let's try to win a bigger one with pocket 6s. With 2 limps, I raised to $25. The button and the 2 limpers decide to call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop, where we flop a beautiful set on 10, 6, 3, 2 diamonds.
It's party time! P-A-R-T. Why? Because I gotta!
Wonderful to flop a set when there's an overcard and there's a flush draw on board. Plenty of things to get value from. When it checks to me, I'm going to bet a little under half pot. Definitely hoping to keep a lot of the players in there with a lot of their ranges. So I only bet $40. The button calls. The only player that has position on me. Not the greatest, but it's fine. We're going to get a clean turn card 1 time. Nope, jack of diamonds. Since the most obvious draw in the world gets there, I don't think I'm able to bet here. I think I have to go for 1 street of pot control, check it over to my opponent, see what he wants to do. So I check. When my opponent quickly checks it back, I think it's much less likely he could ever have a flush here. My set should be good a lot of the time. So when the river is the 4 of hearts, I'm definitely going to go for some value. I don't think I can go too big, though. I think my opponent's most likely holding is like ace 10, king 10, things such as that. So the fact that there's even an overcard to the 10, I'm not sure I'm going to get paid off all too often. Thinking the strongest hand my opponent could have on this hand is second pair. I only bet $100, about 1/3 pot size river, and my opponent tanks for about a minute. Past 35 seconds, I think a raise would be pretty unlikely by my opponent. I think a flush is very unlikely at this point. Praying for a call. He eventually does stick the money in there. Confidently show my 6s, and they are indeed good. Next interesting hand, with 1 limp, I'm going to raise pocket 3s to $20. Hopefully we can hit another set. It'd be wonderful. When only the limper calls, we are heads up to a flop, of 776 two hearts. When my opponent leads for $10, these small leads on draw heavy boards typically, in my experience, always consist of draws. Try to name their own price with like 8-9, ace X of hearts, things such as that. And I'm going to have none of it. I'm going to take the betting lead, make him put more money in while I think he's drawing. I raise to $40. Thinking I have the best hand and with several safe turn cards can throw in another bet. Happy with this play. Turn being the 10 of diamonds, not the safest card in the world. 8-9 gets there, as well as like Jack 10 of hearts. Plenty of heart draws just got upgraded to top pair. When my opponent checks to me, I'm going to check this one back. Hope to get closer to showdown. The river is another bad card, ace of diamonds. Ace X of hearts, definitely in my opponent's range, but I do decide that I have enough showdown value. I check it back, and this time he has King Jack of hearts. So he was drawing on the flop. Definitely happy this hand went my way. Next hand of note. Under the gun raises to $20. And this is an opponent who I would consider is probably one of the best players at the table, very solid. So early position plus him being a strong player means that 10s are just going to fall slightly outside of my 3-betting range. And I'm going to choose to just call this one. The button, the small blind, and the big blind decide to call. So we're going 5 ways to a flop of ace jack 3 rainbow. 2 overcards at 10s. Not really a good sign, but when the blinds check and the pre-flop aggressor checks, this is an opponent who I really don't think would check any reasonable ace, especially with 4 other players in the hand. He could easily just bet an ace to thin the field and get value from a jack, so I'm kind of ruling that out. Thinking I could rep ace 10, ace 5, things such as that. I'm going to turn the 10s into a bluff and start out with a $65 wager. Only the pre-flop aggressor calls. Definitely happy to thin the field and hopefully get a decent turn card. Well, the turn is a 3 of clubs. Somewhat interesting card. I definitely have more 3s in my range than my opponent. I'm not sure that's relevant when I bet into 4 other players. Additionally, if I had like ace 5, I would continue firing here as I'm upgraded to a jack kicker. And I put a lot of pressure on my opponent if he had like king jack, queen jack, maybe king queen, queen 10, things such as that. So I'm going to put in the second barrel. Definitely bluffing with these 10s, not value betting, but trying to get a Jack X to fold. I wager $110. And to that bet, after a little bit of thinking, my opponent eventually folds. So happy with how I played this one. Definitely worked out well. Next interesting hand. The same opponent opens to $20 from the cutoff. When it folds to me, again, he's one of the stronger players at the table, so he's not going to be a 3-bet target. I choose to just call with ace 10. Need some stronger hands in my calling range as well. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to read and play against me, so this is going to be one of the stronger hands I put in my calling range. The big blind calls as well, so we're 3 ways to a flop, which is ace 4, 6, rainbow. Happy to flop top pair, good kicker. I check to my opponent. He bets $30. I could see him c-betting with a large portion of his range. Doesn't have to have an ace at all. So we're happy to just check call all the way down with this particular holding. If we happen to run into ace jack or ace queen or something like that, it's just the nature of the game, and I'm happy I didn't 3-bet it. When the big blind folds, we're heads up to a turn, which is the queen of clubs. I check to my opponent. He has the betting lead. He checks it back. I'm really ruling out an ace at this point. Maybe he has a queen and has some showdown value. So in the river is the 5 of hearts. I'd say this board favors me more in the blinds. I could have more straights than he does, so definitely gives me a nut advantage. But we're going to go for a kind of mergey blocker value bet. It'd be pretty disgusting if I got raised here, but I'm going to bet $40. My opponent folds very quickly, so take another one down. Next interesting hand. With 1 limp, the button raises to $20. I'm in the small blind with king, queen of diamonds. And honestly, this should be a 3-bet. I should not be calling this one. In the moment this opponent had sat down, played for about an hour and a half, and never opened a pot. So I gave him a little bit of credibility for having a hand. But regardless, he had a shorter stack, and I should just be 3-betting and possibly getting this hand in. Too strong to just call, but in this hand, I do just call. Which brings the big blind and the cutoff along. So we're going 4 ways to a flop of queen 6-4, 2 hearts. I check in flow, it checks to the button. He puts out a c-bet for $30. I could raise here too, but I gave this opponent way too much credit, thinking that there's a possibility he has ace queen, pocket kings, pocket aces. So I'm just going to call this one and see what develops on later streets. The other 2 opponents fold, so we're heads up to the 7 of clubs on the turn. I check to my opponent, he checks it back. Clearly does not have a very strong hand at this point. When the river is the 7 of spades, I'm definitely going to go for some value of my own here. My opponent could have queen jack, could have pocket tens, pocket jacks, maybe a disbelieving ace king that just wants to pair off a bet. We're going to bet small and value heavy here. I bet $50. My opponent pretty quickly calls, and I show king queen, and those are good. When it folds to me and I'm in middle position with pocket jacks, I raise to $20. Two later position players decide to call, so we're going to go 3 ways to a flop of king 5 deuce rainbow. On this board, 1 overcard is not enough to make me not bet, especially when I have the nut advantages. I have ace king, pocket kings in range. Both of these opponents really don't. So I'm going to start out with a $35 bet. Only the player to my direct left decides to call, so we are heads up to a turn card, which is the 10 of hearts. There are some times where I'd slow down, reevaluate, maybe go into check call mode, but this particular opponent in the hand had frequently floated and stolen hands from opponents. He would just call flop, turn would go check, bet, fold. He was getting away with that a lot, so I don't really want to give him the opportunity to do that, as well as the fact that I still have pocket kings and ace king in range, so we're going to bet this one for a second street. I bet $80, and my opponent folds. So actually thinking he was doing another float this time. Happy I did not let him push me off my hand on this one. Next hand of note. With a button straddle, there are 3 limps to me. I look down at pocket kings. Definitely going to 3-bet this one. Been doing it a lot. Kings should definitely earn me some action. But on this one, everyone folds. Dang it! Well, we'll move right along to a button straddle with 1 limp. I look down at ace king offsuit in middle position. I raise to $40. 1 late position player, the button, and the limper call. So we're going to go 4 ways to a flop of ace 6 deuce rainbow. On this board, the limper decides to lead for 25. With no real draws out there to be worried about and having top, I think it's fine to just call here and reevaluate turn. Don't really see any reason to raise here. I'm only getting called by better. Pocket sixes, pocket deuces, ace 6. You get the idea. So I choose to just call. I'm surprised to see both other later position players call. With a board this dry and disconnected, I think it's hard for everyone to have a reasonable hand on this one. But regardless, we are 4 ways to a turn card, which is the jack of clubs. Not very good. Ace jack, definitely in all my opponent's ranges. Definitely beat me now. When the early position player leads again for 25, this is going to be one of the times where I have to raise. I have to thin the field on this one. Can't let like 4-5 and maybe the ace 10, ace queen get to see another card for cheap, as well as floated suited connectors that pick up club draws. So I raise to $125, and to this raise, all the opponents quickly fold. So happy to drag another one before we arrive at the final hand of note. With an under the gun straddle, there's 1 call. I raise to $35 from the small blind with king queen offsuit. The big blind and the cutoff decide to call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of queen 5 deuce rainbow. Just gonna go for some pure value. Top pair, good kicker. Maybe weaker queens or medium pocket pairs can pay off a bet. So I get to you for $40. Don't need to go too big with it. The board's pretty dry. Only the cutoff calls. When the turn is the 3 of diamonds, definitely better for a limp caller. I'm gonna go into a check call mode. I don't see myself getting 3 streets of value, so definitely gonna check the turn, reevaluate river. When I check, my opponent bets $40. Not going anywhere, can just call. Happily, top pair, good kicker. River is the 8 of spades. Should not really change anything, so if my opponent bets, I'll just hope he has a weaker pocket pair or weaker queen. When I check it to him, he checks it back and has ace 3 of spades. So queen's definitely going to be good on this one, and we drag another pot to end the night. For this 2-5 game, we're into the game for 1,300 based on the first hand and several smaller ones like it. But we are out of the game for 1,648. That is a profit of $348 across 6 hours, equates to $57 an hour or 11 big blinds an hour. Yeah, this is the first session of 2023 on video, and happy to be 100% win rate so far in 2023. Goals for this year is definitely have a wider than average 3-betting range. I want to get into a more linear 3-bet or fold strategy, which I think is going to help the win rate and help me out long term as I try to go up stakes. Also wanted to play a little bit of 5-10, get some of those on the vlog. Plenty of 5-10 games popping up around Florida, so definitely trying to up the stakes, up the results a little bit. Goal is a video every week, hopefully 40 videos for the year, so we're going to try to crank them out a little bit better going forward. And finally, I just want to get 30,000 subscribers. That's going to be a goal for the year. I want to put it on tape, see if I can get to it. On that, I will see you all next week for a 5-5 video, slightly bigger than a 2-5 game. We are definitely going to take some big steps in this new year. Thank you.